There was a player, considered by many as the best one-on-one defender of the moment, a true defensive specialist, where his only mission in the game was to nullify the opposing star. That ideal complement to a team of 2, 3 stars who dominate the game like no one else. But defending is for another day. Today, I bring the story of Andre Robertson, a guy who not so long ago was a starter in a team that was a candidate for everything in the league, sharing a starting 5 with a certain Durant and a certain Westbrook, putting the Warriors against the ropes in the conference finals. And today, instead, at just 1 year old, there is no trace of him. It's like all of a sudden, out of the blue, he disappeared, and we never heard from him again. Andre Robertson was drafted in the 26th position in the draft of 2013. A rather discreet position, to be honest. He was drafted by the Wolves, but before he could even play minutes with them, he ended up going to the Thunder. Oklahoma had a plan for him, a plan that surely in his wildest dreams he could never have imagined. He began his first season on a slow burner. He had to earn every minute he was on the court. In fact, his coach, Scott Brooks, used 9 different starting 5 that season. And of those 9, Robertson was only part of 3 of them. He only played 16 games as a starter. Yes, but keep an eye on this. In the 16 games he started, they had a record of 12-4. The coaching staff had something to do with it, because he went from being a 16-time starter in the 13th and 14th in his rookie season to 65 times the following season. Careful, it is true that it coincided with Durant's injury, who missed a large part of the season, being able to play that year only 27 games. Even so, he completely earned his starting place. There is no argument. In fact, they had a positive record when he was a starter, with a 41-24. But what's even heavier, let's remember, without Kevin Durant, the record that season, when he wasn't starting, was 4-13 against. Brutal. From that point on, there was no God to get Belcantato out of him. And no wonder. Robertson was for several years, if not the best, one of the best defenders in the league. A true specialist in defending the star of the team. And if you don't believe me, watch this. I'll prove it to you. Moreover, I'm going to highlight it to you with, for example, 2 of the best defenders in recent years, Kawhi Leonard and Marcus Smart. 2 players who have the coveted Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going to show you with the advanced statistic. An advanced statistic that shows in a compelling way the defensive influence of a player. In this case, defensive isolation defense. That is, pressuring the player, closing spaces, limiting the effectiveness of the offensive player, and forcing him to make uncomfortable decisions. In short, nullify the opposing star. Look, since the eye, his performance has been increasing until he became the absolute elite of the league But that year, he was not even nominated for the Best Defender of the Year. But let's continue. If we measure him in defensive distance covered, look at the difference. The guy was always running and always defending the most difficult player. Besides, he was not only the absolute elite in on-ball defense, but he was killing himself defending when the opposing star didn't have the ball. There is a statistic that measures how well you work to make him not receive the ball, or that he doesn't feel comfortable moving around the court, or bother him in every step he takes. Basically, make his life impossible so he doesn't receive the ball. Check it out, absolute top of the league for several years as well. Finally, let's look at the most general statistic in defensive terms. The defensive rate impact. Here he remains top as well. Well, I repeat, he never won Defensive Player of the Year by... For example, you see, in the Year of the Year, a very powerful Cubs defending the championship they won the year before with Kyrie's historic triple in the Year of the Year. Well, that next year, in the Year of the Year, they finished second in the league, and they made it to the finals again. But I want to highlight one game, a game that pitted the Cavaliers against the Thunders. At the time, the Cubs were coming in with a record of 36-15, and LeBron has to face a rocky Thunders without Durant, but with Andre Robertson consecrated in the league as a top defender, and a Westbrook scoring a triple-double per game, that too. Well, LeBron ended up averaging more than 26 points that year, with more than 55% shooting from the field and 36% in three-pointers. Well, that game, he finished with 18 points and on a poor 42% shooting from the field and 25% on three-pointers. On top of that, with a ±4. On top of that, they end up losing that game, the only one in the entire month of February. One example among many of how Robertson enjoyed nullifying opposing stars. And you'll say, fuck, but then what happened? Why don't we see him in the NBA anymore? Well, you see, the reality is that as good as he is at defending, he's bad at shooting. He's a real disaster as a shooter, and in general as an attacker. We save him, and that the good game without the ball. Cutting to the basket to make easy baskets, but little else. He's a player who has a fair career averages. Let's leave it there. Careful career averages, mind you. 47% on three-pointers, and above all, 46% in free throws. So there's no way to take it. In the playoffs, in general, those bad percentages are maintained, but in free throws, on top of that, it drops to 26%. Brutal. But there's more. You know how I like to dig into the data? Well, look at this. The data says that Andre Robertson has the dubious honor of being the worst starter in NBA history in three-point percentage in a season. He is the worst player, having started a minimum of 50 games and having shot a minimum of 183 pointers in a season. That you have to shoot them, eh? In the 16 and 17, he shot 24% in three-pointers, having shot 184. On the podium are Anthony Walker and Anteto. Anteto, in the 18th and 19th, shot over 200 the guy, total for a 25%. But mind you, Walker has much more merit, eh? This guy shot 285 with the same percentage. But in the year 2000, the reality is that it was not so accepted to shoot so many three-pointers. There are ducks here. But well, to the subject, in free throws also has the worst season in history in percentages. With players under 205, that is, outside players, obviously also with more than 50 games as a starter, and having shot at least 100 free throws, he has a sad 42% in the 16-17. Disastrous. Obviously, Andre was there to defend, and that's it. And let's see. In principle, the idea was very good. Because in a team with Westbrook and Keedy, it makes an ideal fit. A player who defends like a bad dog and leaves the ball to the good guys. I am sure that even today he could have had a place in some team in the league, especially since he never got paid anything crazy. As we can see here, he was paid $1 million and a bit for most of his career. And then he started to go up a little bit to 10 a year, but nothing crazy either, and even more with what players are paid nowadays. I'm telling you, a defender like that gives you life as a role player. So, what's going on? What happened with Andre Robertson? Well, the reality is that he had the bad luck of having a career-ending injury. Or what is the same thing? A very serious injury. An injury that has ended the career of many players. So he could never be the player he was. In fact, between injury, surgery, relapses, and a host of complications, he was out of competition for more than 30 months. From January 18 to the end of July 2020, 909 days. Since then, his performance in the league was somewhat residual, and he was never again important in Xander's rotation. Just look at the total and utter debacle of his defensive performance since his return. As a curiosity, something you probably didn't know, at the end of the 2020 season, he was traded to Brooklyn, where he played in the 2020 first with the Nets just 5 games, all coming off the bench and playing about 12 minutes on average, with 1 point and 3 rebounds on average. On top of that, drastically worsening his shooting percentages even more if possible, for tracking. From there, he was denigrated to the G League, where today, with his 31 years, he plays in the Oklahoma team, the Oklahoma Blue. A shout out to one of the best defenders to ever step on a basketball court that I personally remember very fondly, and who, obviously, with a handicap as big as his lousy shooting reliability, has no place in this demanding league after an injury as serious as the one he had. You what? Remember watching him play in those historic Xanders with Durant and Westbrook? Did you know he played for the Nets at the end of his career? Tell me about it down here and give me your support to keep growing. Ciao.